Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. So today I actually wanted to look at Reddit and just look at this question. It says, what mindset shift contributed to you actually losing weight and sticking to it? I wanted to try to answer it. I haven't read any of these at all, but I thought I would go ahead and maybe come to my own answer through reading, basically, because I'm not exactly sure, right off the bat. But I just thought this would be an interesting discussion. So I'm going to go ahead and get into it. So this person says, hello, new to the sub and starting fresh. I have a lot of weight to lose and my weight is higher than it's ever been. I'm one of those. I've been on a diet my whole life, people, and I'm sure there's folks like that here. Okay, I want you guys to know it's a little bit worrisome on the psychological side. That's kind of like a BED calling card. Okay, so I would not necessarily, you don't diagnose somebody, but it's like red flag, right? Anyways, if that's you, I'd love to know, what is the shift or spark that got you to stick to losing weight beyond a few weeks, especially if you've tried a bunch of times before? How did you make sure this time was the time you stuck to it? And do you have any advice? Interesting. Some insight about me. I've always been fat since I was young, and I've been on every diet under the sun. For years, I could keep myself under what I call my danger number, but during the pandemic and stress around the health of my father, financial issues and burnout, it's ballooned. Oh, sorry. And financial issues and burnout has ballooned my weight to a number I thought was impossible, to be honest. Yeah, this person is very much giving BED logic. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but I'm just pointing it out because this is stress and all these issues that likely caused anxiety that ballooned the weight. Okay. And this is also interesting too. Thought was impossible. So if you eat a lot of calories every single day, you can gain as much weight as you possibly can. Like you can just, the sky is the limit. Okay. But it's interesting. So let's see what people say. This person says, I stopped trying to do the optimal perfect diet and just started trying to do better. I think that's great advice. In addition to learning to ask my body when I'm full, I still enjoy the cravings and social eating / drinking. My rule was asking myself, can I do this forever? If I couldn't, I tried something else. My problem didn't seem to be losing weight. It was maintaining. Interesting. I think that's great advice. This is such a major thing. Such a major thing. Because in terms of BED, one of the parts of the cycle is an overly restrictive diet. So that is actually a part of it. Because even if you're not doing the diet, you ruminate about it. So there's a lot of times when somebody who has this issue, when they think about dieting, they think about how horrible it is and how hard it is and how strict it is and how awful it is. And that's a part of the disorder, is you kind of demonize weight loss in your mind, or you make it really difficult. Now, what I will say on this channel is I don't believe the opposite is true either. I'm not a girly pop that says it's easy to lose weight, and I'm not one that says it's gruelingly hard. It's midline. It's middle of the road and as far as difficulty. What is difficult is being super morbidly obese. That's very difficult. Being morbidly obese is difficult. These things are difficult. Whether you are maintaining that size or you are losing that size or gaining, it is always difficult, no matter what. So that in and of itself is hard. But in terms of losing weight in and of itself, it's middle effort. It's not easy and it's not hard. It's just there. It's effort, it's work, but it's not impossible work. It's just effort and work. And like I said, if you are struggling to lose weight from a super morbidly obese perspective, keep in mind, it's not the losing the weight that's this horrible thing or really difficult. It's being that fat that is difficult. Don't shift the blame onto losing weight. Shift, keep the blame on being that size. That's why it's so difficult. Because as you lose weight, it does get easier, even if it's marginally easier, even if there are still weight loss side effects, which we do talk about on this channel. I've actually been going through quite a bit because during this time of the year is when you can lose weight at your easiest. And it can be tough on a physical level to lose weight. There are side effects, which I have covered it in one of my videos. I really should link it, but I might be too lazy to do that. So sorry, but I've done it. It's on my channel. You can find it. Anyways, let's continue. I used to listen to all the advice online for the best way to do things. If you do that, you'll eventually be pulled in 20 different directions. In reality, just doing anything at all is the best way to get started, then slowly building up from there. Perfect. Love this advice. This is definitely what helped me, especially because when I first started, I was extremely hypothyroid. And so my body was craving extremely hyperpalatable food at that time because my body needed energy and needed quick, easy energy. And that has changed. It changed, when I did my hypo protocol. It shifted around about 6 months in. That also could be around the time where, I hadn't had my VED episodes for almost a year, or like about a year. So I don't really know what caused what. I'm guessing it's the hypo protocol, to be honest. But it took a while. When I cut seed oils, it took a while for my appetite to come down. But it did. And then I didn't gain anymore. And then my weight stabilized for a while, and I just kind of recovered until I could eventually start losing. So it was a journey for me. Most people never get as severe as I did. So you could probably just start losing. I was like at the floor, okay, in terms of health. It was really awful. But most people aren't like that. So you could probably just start right away. But just, yeah. At the end of the day, always remember that it has to do with a caloric deficit. And I always suggest just do the caloric deficit. That will make you not hungry. So whatever macros you need to where you aren't hungry, do that. Because there are genetic differences in people that I feel like it's never acknowledged. And that's really important. Okay. What works for me is having kind of boring but very easy, simple, and fairly healthy dinners most days, and when social stuff happens or during weekends, satisfying whatever craving I have. Very interesting. Whatever I eat, I try to keep an eye on how I feel during and after. I stop eating when I'm not hungry, not when I'm full, both for the boring meals and the exciting meals. I also check how the meals make me feel, how the meal makes me feel. This has been eye-opening to see how I don't actually enjoy a lot of junk food if I take into account the feeling later. I don't let myself starve. If I need to eat more, I eat more. Yeah, I think this is all pretty decent advice, I would say. Okay, so they are on an appetite suppressant. Okay. Yeah, I think if your appetite is under control, like I think a lot of times people don't think about appetite in terms of weight loss, and it's really, really important. Because if your appetite is really high, it's for a reason. And I'm talking physical appetite. So, and that's the thing too, like for my BED girlies and boilies, it can be really tricky because you can have physical hunger and emotional hunger. And the emotional hunger is what you don't want to ever engage in. The physical hunger, it has to be addressed. It could be a hormone imbalance. It could be that your diet is just lacking or that you don't have the right macro balance for you. It could be that your calories are just simply too low. It could be any of that. And so I think hunger as a consideration in weight loss is a major thing. It needs to be considered. And a lot of discussions about weight loss don't ever consider it. And I feel like when their body is screaming at them in hunger, and the idea is just to ignore it, that, in my opinion, is kind of an EG logic in and of itself. It's tricky to just tell somebody that. So always set yourself up for weight loss success definitely gain muscle, especially if you're super morbidly obese, because muscle you have is leverage against the fat. So you have to think about it that way, because it's much more of a war. If you're really, really big, it's tough. There are battles, there are wins, there are losses. It's a lot when you're coming from that level of obesity. So I would also suggest weightlifting, building muscle. It's very, very important. And you also have a much easier time building muscle when you are super morbidly obese while losing weight. Like, you can still build muscle during that time. So don't be afraid of that, and don't focus too much on the number on the scale, because a lot of very fat people don't want to build muscle because they want the weight to come off, quote unquote, faster. But if you lose muscle while you're losing weight, it can set you up to gain it back as well. So I try to keep all the physiological things in mind, and you want to set your body up for the most success in terms of sustained weight loss. And of course, there is the whole mental aspect, which is a whole other thing. Okay. Let's see, this person. I stopped calling it a temporary diet and started to think of it as the new normal. I want to cultivate a new relationship with food and a new mindset that would last me the rest of my life. No food is forbidden to me, but it does need to fit within a certain calorie budget, which automatically forces me to reconsider or just take a small portion. Sounds good to me. Other things are, I worked at stopping being afraid of the sensation of occasionally being hungry. It won't kill me. It's just temporarily uncomfortable. Yes, like there are times for me when I don't get the macro balance correct, and I might feel a little hungrier that day. And if it's, like I said, for me personally, if it's under a 4 on hunger, so if it's like 1, 2, or 3, I won't eat. If it's a 4 or higher, I probably will eat something, even if it's very little, if it's like a very small thing. But it has to be physical. And if my macros were just trash, like let's say one day I just ate pretty much all carbs, or like I ate all sugar or something, like if I just had like 2 huge bags of candy and then like beef jerky and that was all I had all day, I probably would be hungry, because that's like a very, very low fat day. And so it probably make me extremely hungry. And especially for me personally, I really have to have dairy. Otherwise I get very hungry, because I really have to make sure I get enough calcium. It's really, really important for me in terms of satiety. So if I don't, then I could be hungrier. And so I can choose like, okay, should I just deal with it tonight and then just do better with macros tomorrow? Or should I eat more tonight and this and that? And you just try to make sure that you're staying in your deficit most days, and you'll get there eventually, no matter what the damn scale says, because you do blow a lot. And then it comes down, and then you blow it, and then it comes down. It's like over and over. So, okay. Anyways. I forgive myself if I overeat or give in to temptation. It's not all or nothing. One mistake doesn't mean the week, weekend, or even the rest of the day is lost. Every calorie matters. So this is true. I say this especially in terms of the thyroid protocol. This is very true in terms of seed oil consumption as well. It's not 100% black and white. It's really just reducing as much as you possibly can. If you have a drop of canola in something, it is really different than having a cup of canola in something. You know, it's totally different. So it's really important not to think black and white. Black and white makes you never lose weight. Okay, I would say that might be one of my biggest things, is the black and white thinking around dieting. Okay. I weighed myself only every week instead of every day to not get discouraged by fluctuations, and I try to think in long-term trends. Yeah, so I've seen people do this, and this works for some people. This is extremely important. So this person is on point with this. From a super morbidly obese perspective, you need to think about it a year-over-year process. Like, think about it year over year, because there are certain seasonal aspects where people will put on weight or swell, whether it's at the summer solstice, like right now. Like if you're a super morbidly obese person and you're currently in a caloric deficit, you may be swelling at this time of the year, and the same thing around Christmas time. So try to think about it in terms of year over year. That's a really good way to tell and make sure that you're making progress, because remember, from a super morbidly obese perspective, it's not necessarily likely that you're going to lose all the weight in 1 year. It's probably going to take 3 to 4 years, depending on how big you are. And if you keep that in perspective, I love what somebody said in my comments. They said, think of it as getting a degree. It's such a good way to think about it. That's sustainable. And the biggest thing is that you never get back up to your highest. That's what you want. And look at where you're at year over year. And that has helped me. That has kept my sanity, because otherwise I could have fallen for like the set point theory thing, because I tend to plateau around October, November until March or April. It was something that tended to happen. This year I went up in December and November. I got to about 299 in late October of last year. And I gained weight in November because I had a horrifically high appetite, and I was like, whoa. And so I just ate a lot, basically, in November. I had a lot of fat. I don't know. I was really craving fat like crazy. And I think it was just having done the deficit for 6 months, and it was just something my body was like, bitch, you're going to eat, period. And I was like, okay, because I was very, very, very physically hungry. That lasted throughout November. So I actually put on like 10 pounds because I ate a lot. And that was kind of crazy. But then in December, my appetite went away. And then I just kind of stayed there. And then I swelled very drastically in December, kind of insanely. I swelled by like 20 pounds by the end of December because of the seasonal aspect. And I wasn't even eating that much in December. It was wild. So that could be very discouraging. And I think that time of the year for a lot of people, especially in super morbid obesity, they always think like, oh, my diet's working. But then they get to that point in the year and then they're like, oh my God, all my work is gone and it's over and blah, blah. And then they give up and then they don't do it anymore. Whereas what ended up happening is I went all the way up to around, I got to like 328 by January 1st of this year. And I started counting again in January. And over January, I lost pretty much all of the bloat. And then I lost that 10 pounds I gained in November and February. So I was kind of back down. And then in March, towards the end of March, I got to around 296. I was no longer super morbidly obese. You guys remember that? And then now I'm at around 283. So really since January, my actual like fat weight, not bloat weight, was probably around 310, and I'm at like 283 now. So I've lost almost 30 pounds so far this year, which if you calculate it, I plateaued in April. I didn't lose any weight. I was very salty and pissed about it. But I didn't lose any weight because I went back to the gym, so I built a lot of muscle. But if you calculate the rest of the 4 months, I lost around 7 point something, which is about the 2 pounds a week with a little bit of muscle added. So pretty on point with the weight loss, and we'll see how it continues, especially after this moment. I'm very swollen at this time. I swell a lot. So I'm still in that swelling moment in my hypo recovery, but I am morbidly obese, so it is interesting to see. But anyways, I think that that's something to keep in mind too, is that there are plateaus, but you have to remember that if you're doing your caloric realism and you're counting and you're doing your stuff and you're exercising and you're doing everything, you're still burning fat, even if you're retaining water or if you're constipated. I mean, we have to get graphic here, but there can be constipation in weight loss too. So your weight might not be going down for those reasons too. But just if you keep caloric realism in mind, you can see the kind of the breakdown I gave you over this year. The calories were still real. It's still been a thing the whole time. And that's how you lose. it's a process. So I think it's important to just keep that caloric realism, especially from a super morbidly obese perspective, because the scale can dance around and do a lot of crazy shit. And that's not even considering, like, if you're a woman and you have your cycle, it can do a lot of crazy shit too. So you really have to just take the number on the scale with a grain of salt and just really focus on the behaviors you're doing. And if it's all on point, then it will be on point. It will be okay. Okay? Okay. Anyways, so let's see. Sorry. I forced myself to step on the scale and shave my face to see how bad it had gotten. It was bad, like really bad. I then visualized what I wanted to look like a year from then and used other people's progress pics for motivation. Weight loss truly can change your appearance entirely. I would be a little worried about that. I don't think this is good advice for the OP. I probably wouldn't say that. For a lot of people, though, it's fine, but OP, in my opinion, seems ED-ish, so I don't know if that would help. Just saying. I downloaded MyFitnessPal and paid for a year-long membership. That $100 investment was important. It was commitment. Okay, fair enough. Even though only needed it for the first few months, it was super useful to get in the habit of counting calories and learning macros. Yeah, I like the apps where it scans. It's a lot easier. The barcode scanner made things very easy initially. It was worth it. I also bought a kitchen scale, which I still use daily. I'm thinking of getting one myself because I have to do a lot more meal prep for financial reasons. So, yeah, I cut up my own watermelon because Publix is ridiculous. They are ridiculously expensive. So I cut up my own. And I would like a scale so I can get the exact calories of it. But estimates are okay. We always estimate too, but just be honest, I measured it with a cup measure, my diced watermelon. It's like, you don't have to be absolutely perfect with calorie counting either, but you have to be within a ballpark, So you need to be good enough, I guess you could say. Okay. Anyways. I got obsessed with volume eating. It was eye-opening to learn that portion sizes aren't nearly as important as calories. You don't need to eat small meals to lose weight. Yeah, so this is very big in terms of genetic differences. So a long time ago, I was researching about volume eating. And really, genetically, there are two types of people. I believe, anyways, from what I remember. But this stayed with me for 10 years. But basically, some people genetically, they feel full based on volume. And my friend Lisa, she is this way. So she talks a lot about having lots of melon and things that are high in volume and low in calories, and it really helps her. For me, I'm the other one, which is somebody who is full based on fat content or fat. So I have to make sure I have saturated fat in a day, or I will literally be starving no matter what, because it doesn't matter. So, and then I always talk about the seed oil consumption, because the fat in seed oils, it doesn't register in my stomach at all. So it's like I'm just eating air. But saturated fat makes me full. So that's something where you have to just understand. I think either one is valid. It doesn't really matter. It's genetic difference. So if you are somebody where volume is extremely important, then you're going to have to do it. If you're somebody where the fat is important, you're going to have saturated fat. Okay? So anyways, I also stopped worrying about exercise. Recognizing it actually made it harder for me to stick to a deficit. Okay, I don't agree with this at all. I think that's horrible advice. I think that's really, really horrible. So that's very stupid. I kept going for long walks for my mental health, but did not add back calories. Okay, that's fair enough. You don't have to add back the calories when you exercise. In my opinion, you don't. When I go to the gym, I add about 250. This is going to be super individual. It really depends on who you are, or whatever, what works for you. You really just have to see. When I would do full body weights at the gym, I would add 500, but now I split it. So I do 250 and 250 on the days, and it actually helps to eat a little bit more on the gym days. But it's up to you to figure out what works. So these are all like little things that you can consider. But you don't necessarily need to worry about exercise, but you need to do it. So exercise is very important in terms of satiety and insulin resistance. And, it's very helpful with diabetes, managing diabetes, that kind of stuff. Exercise is extremely important. So especially from a super morbidly obese perspective, that doesn't mean to kill yourself at the gym or like push too hard. You don't want to risk injury. It's always better to not be injured. It's okay if you have to take breaks, especially if you're very unwell. Trust your body, take a break. It's fine, But in general, be working towards exercising. Even for me in the very beginning, I would only go to the gym for 3 months out of the year. Those 3 months really helped me. So it helped me through the rest of the year. So you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to do everything all the time, but just do something. I also have an active job and I walk a lot, and that's been really, really helpful. So just moving and being active, even if it's like cleaning your house or doing active chores or hobbies that are active, whatever it is to be more active, it will only help you in losing weight, especially in long haul weight loss, because you got to try to break out of a sedentary mindset. You just got to break out of it. It will help you so much to not be sedentary. It helps so much, because then if you're not absolutely perfect with your calories, you'll still lose. It's like it still helps over time, or like everything kind of balances out if you have a more active lifestyle. So just work towards that, in my opinion. I think it's extremely important. Has been super instrumental in my sustained weight loss. It's been very, very important. Okay. I also came to terms with daily scale fluctuations and used my lowest morning weight each week as my progress. This is a great idea. Great idea. That's a really good idea. Weighing weekly was always bad for me, as I was incorrectly believed I hadn't lost any weight. Weighing daily was and is still important for me during maintenance. Ensures my health is top of mind each morning. I sometimes will, sometimes won't. Most days I do. I think in terms of ED, it's important to try to do certain exposure therapies when you're ready, etc. I'm not trying to like force anybody to see how much they weigh, but any bit of that was in me, it helped to just do it every day. That was advice that my friend Lisa told me. She was like, just weigh yourself every day. Just desensitize. And I listened, and it worked. I got over it. And again, you just try really hard not to be emotional about it at all, because it doesn't really matter that much. And over time, you kind of develop a trust with your body. Like I've had to over the years, because it's like I did have, weight gain towards the winter, and then it comes back off in the spring, in the summer, and then I go even further. So it's like, it's been like a little bit of this dance, especially in the super morbid obese category. We'll see how it is, especially when I'm no longer morbid, which I think will happen by the end of the year. I'm already halfway through, you guys. Isn't that crazy? But yeah. So anyways, that was an interesting comment. I both liked it and didn't at certain points. Okay. Let's see. Improved health has motivated me way more than looks. I've dieted off and on since I was a teenager. This is huge in terms of ED. So I would say the number one belief that changed it for me was prioritizing health. So when I did keto, the ED mindset I had at the time was, I don't care about my health. I just want the weight off. That was the mindset I had. I had reached a certain point, around 2018, 2019, where I was so sick of being fat, and I absolutely hated it. This is after like one of the worst BED relapses, probably the worst BED relapse I ever had, which was in 2018. So I went straight from the binging into the massive restriction. And I was just like, I hate my body so much. I am so sick of being fat. I'm going to do this very, very hardcore keto. I don't care if it's not healthy. I'm doing it, period. And that was the mindset I went into. And it was definitely one of my biggest regrets because it really messed up my hormones and it really fucked me up and it made my hypo drastically worse. And it was definitely something that pushed me on the edge. It was horrible. And during that time I was doing it, I had the worst B and R cycles you could even imagine. And it was very hard for my body. It was very horrible. It was horrible, horrible, horrible. It was kind of like the final boss of my BED, like, because I had been fighting it since 2014. And it came back with a vengeance in 2018, and that was kind of like the final battle, basically, to where it was finally defeated October of 2020. But it was horrible. So when I went into 2021 and I was post-BED, I was just like, the health is what matters. Weight loss doesn't matter as much as health. And I had to break that in my mind. And so I worked on my health without losing weight until my health hit a glass ceiling and it didn't progress anymore. And then it was time to start losing. So it was a process. But again, I was very severe. I was in a very, very severe state. That's not typical for everybody. But from coming to the bottom of it, the most important belief I had was that my health was more important than weight loss. And that was one of the things that saved me because I had to let my metabolism recover from what I had done. It's awful, but it was horrible. But anyways, not everybody's going to have that experience. Clearly, like I said, most people don't. Most people can just start losing and it's fine. But it depends on where you're coming from. You get me? So anyways, I've dieted off and on since I was a teenager, but everything finally clicked into place after getting some mediocre blood test results and simultaneously seeing my parents' health decline. Yeah, a health scare can be major. Trust me on that. It's a huge reality check. I quit lying to myself and started acting like a grown-up, meaning I go to bed and get up at normal times and moderate my alcohol and sweets. But I haven't eliminated those things entirely. Okay. I track my calories even on days when I know I'm going over my goal. It helps keep me accountable when I fall back into old habits of lying to myself when the scale doesn't budge and say, I've been working so hard. Yep. This is really important in terms of ED. Don't lie to yourself. Don't lie to yourself and don't lie to other people. It's a huge one. Then I look at my average calorie deficit and see that's not the case. Yeah. It's very important to keep, from an ED perspective, you got to keep caloric realism. It's very, very important. That's why it's good to track. It's very good to track because then you can have a record of things. It's very helpful. I shifted my identity. This is so important. I used to identify as someone who was unathletic and didn't like getting out of breath. Yep. Now I work out vigorously 4 to 6 times per week, but I do it to fuel my new active hobbies like hiking and skiing. These are things I never thought I would do a few years ago. I now think of myself as an active person. Yes. I say that too. You guys have heard me say that a lot. Like I will say like I don't have a sedentary lifestyle or have an active job. So it's like it's very important to have some of those identity shifts, especially within ED and BED. A lot of times your ED becomes a part of your identity. And it's really important to divorce from that because also like it's a BED coded thing to identify so much with being fat and to identify with fatness as a part of your identity. And I had already done that work. That was kind of earlier in the recovery. What I suffered with last year was an identity crisis because I wasn't deathly ill anymore. And I didn't know who I was or what to do with my life after I had achieved the goal of getting to a moderately unhealthy place rather than a deathly ill place. because it was so much work to get out, and it was so difficult, and such like I said, it was a whole ass Eras tour to get out of that very, very, very deep hypothyroidism that was really, really unhealthy and really awful. It was so horrible that when it finally ended, I didn't know what to do anymore, and I didn't know who I was, because I had spent so many years, from 2020 till 2023, I had spent so many years deathly ill that when it was over, I was like, oh my God, who am I? What do I do now? It was crazy. So that can happen too. Like, you have to be willing to actually get better, because there are people that are scared of getting better too. And that was different. That was just because it took so much. It was like a passion in life, or like a job, or like something I got up. It was the first thing I thought about every time I woke up in the morning, and the last thing I thought about before I went to bed. It was my health. And it was dealing with my hypothyroidism, and dealing with the health issues I have, and losing the weight, and doing this and doing that, and just hoping and praying I would get out of it, that I could be normal, that I could have like a normal health again, because I didn't know if I could. I didn't know if I could ever get it back, but I just hoped and prayed and believed. And so putting that much passion into it, obviously it worked, but it was like a huge shock when it had happened, because I didn't know who I was, because suddenly that didn't have to be my only pursuit anymore. And I became very overwhelmed by choices and options. And I still struggle with that feeling of overwhelm sometimes. But I think that's kind of like the trauma from having been so ill. So that's a different thing. But in terms of ED, you have to break the identity of I'm a fat person, which this person in the OP said that too. They said, I've always been fat. You see what I'm saying? They have like a specific number that they think about. I'm one of those, I've been on a diet my whole life, people. Those are all like identifiers and identity related things. So you have to let your identity change in ED. It's extremely important. Okay. So I appreciate that perspective a lot. Okay, I'm going to read this one too. So I started reading more about why I felt the way I did. The Hungry Brain by Stephen, I'm just going to say Stephen, helped me learn about the brain-food relationship, and Salt, Sugar, and Fat by Michael Moss is showing me how the food industry exploited our brain-food relationship to get us to eat more so that they can make more money. It was eye-opening and has made it a little easier to say no to foods. I also significantly increased my water intake, which has helped curb my hunger. Okay, interesting. This helps me sometimes, for sure. It doesn't always help, but it does help sometimes. So it is worth, trying to stay hydrated and etc. Obviously, to see if that's why you're feeling hungry. I think sometimes having a little bit of salt can help too, because I've had this a lot of times at night, where I might feel a little hungry. If I have like some tahini and some water, it works. So it's just something to consider at times. It could help. I fully committed to calorie counting to lose weight and plan to continue to do so even when I'm ready for maintenance, okay? This allows me to eat what I want, but in moderation. I found some great health influencers that share great tasting recipes that are lower calorie. It's good. I think this is great advice. I've also stopped ordering out for dinner and accepted that eating dinner doesn't have to be an event where I love all the food. I just have to simply eat dinner for nourishment. Now I still have to make foods I enjoy, but I'm not ordering a ton of high-fat foods that will still leave me hungry. Finally, I discovered a love for walking outside, which it sounds like you already have. I'm doing 75 hard. It's not for everyone, but it's helped me tremendously in finding a routine that works for me. I finished in less than 2 weeks and plan on making a few small adjustments to overall sticking to the same routine. Okay. Also, I write everything down in a little notebook. I make a checklist of all the tasks I need to do to stick to my new lifestyle and check them off as I go every single day. I've also come to terms that this needs to be a permanent change if I want the weight loss to be permanent. I've lost weight before, but this is the first time that I feel fully in control of what I'm doing. That sounds amazing. I finally feel like I'm doing it am doing it the sustainable way. I think this is great. This comment is really good. So I will say, my perspective on junk foods, you guys pretty much know. I think at least in terms of like hypothyroidism, the seed oil consumption is a major thing. It's like very, very empty calories. And so getting rid of that, I think, is ultimately what helped me on the physical side the most of anything I've ever done. Because it made my insulin resistance improve, which made me less hungry. And then year over year, I continued to recover, and it made things better and better. And then I just kept adding things to it that all contributed and have all made things get better. So in terms of like the, this part, what did they say? Oh yeah. To get us to eat more so they can make more money. Yeah. So this is major too. So it's always good to be skeptical of like clown foods or, circus foods kind of thing, like weird things that are kind of bizarre. I don't, like I said, for me, I focus mostly on the seed oil consumption aspect because I loved this part where they said here, I'm not ordering a ton of high-fat foods that will still leave me hungry. So for me personally, as I described, that would be seed oil fats that leave me hungry. Saturated fat, I get very full. So that could be a genetic difference. So it really depends. You just have to see what works for you. I think overall, in terms of the actual practical side, you just have to figure out what works for you, honor your hunger, and just, it could be different for you. I will always say, I believe there are some people that do better on a higher carb diet, some people that do better on higher protein, some people that do better on higher fat. Then there are people like me who do better with it mostly balanced, and maybe shift around on different days. I'd say that was one of the biggest belief shifts I had too, was just that I don't have to cut out any macros, because I used to always do overly restrictive diets where I would like hop from keto to vegan over and over. And I just remember feeling like I couldn't have everything without just massively gaining weight. And it took me just understanding that's only true because I'm binging, So if I'm not binging, then I can have everything and I don't have to feel unsatisfied, because for me personally, I need to have it be balanced. And for a lot of people, maybe that could be the case. Like I said, I'm open to more differences in people as I've lost more weight, because I see how my body's changed and how different I feel than I used to. So I'm more open to that. But all I will say as a general advice is just get the macros that you need to stay in that slight, moderate deficit. And even if you have to just do 1 pound a week, don't feel bad about it. Even if you have to do half a pound a week, don't feel bad about it. It doesn't matter. We're not on The Biggest Loser. We're not in a race. We don't have to lose it as fast as possible. So you just got to figure it out in that sense. But yeah, I hope that you guys like this video. Let me know what you think. I am going to go get to the gym now. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, night, whatever. And I will see you guys very soon. Have a good one. Bye.